Local farmers might be able to bring home the bacon. The Prime Act bill is up for discussion in Congress, which would allow small farmers and ranches to sell their meat locally. It would also allow for more transparency into how your food is processed. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie is one of the cattle-raising lawmakers who reintroduced the act, and he joins us now. Thank you, Congressman, for joining us. This bill, this act, I should say, the Prime Act, is being touted as the greatest opportunity in food freedom in decades. So it says that you don't need a federal bureaucrat on the premises of a slaughterhouse in order for your food to be safe. What say you?
Well, there's two trends right now in America, and they're at odds with each other. You've got moms who want to know where the food's coming from that they're feeding their children, and they long for the wholesome, nutrient-dense food that our grandparents used to eat. Meanwhile, you've got four companies. They're multinational companies that control meat processing in the United States. 85% of the meat processed is done by one of these companies. One's owned by China, one's owned by Brazil. My Prime Act is catching on in the House and the Senate. It says if you're not crossing state lines, if you're engaged in local commerce, then a farmer should be able to use a local processor and sell to a local consumer. It's that simple. So I'm asking people, while you're firing up those grills on this Labor Day weekend, think about where that came from, and think about the farmer down the road, and why couldn't you buy it from him and use some local processor? Well,
Congressman, I do buy my meat from the farmer down the road, and I'll tell you, I trust him. I know he wants my business. If he chooses a custom slaughterhouse, it's in his interest to make sure that that place is safe, and I believe there hasn't been a foodborne illness in meat since like 2012. There's a meat sort of a lot of people trying to eat more meat in their diet, be more animal-based. At the same time, the government's telling them not to eat meat. Tell us about that debate going on.
Well, they want you to eat bugs or to eat some kind of fake meat. But look, we don't want food that's made in a factory. We want food that comes from a farm, right? And that's what the Prime Act allows, because that's what our bodies are geared for. We've got so many autoimmune issues these days, diseases that I don't think our grandparents have. And you are what you eat. So we need to get back to eating healthy. Eating local is the best way to do that. And local processors are equipped to do this. During COVID, the meat industrial complex let us down, but the small processors won't let us down. And that's what the Prime Act does. By the way, call your representative and call your two senators. This bill's in the Senate, too. And the lead sponsor's name is Senator Angus King in the Senate.
That's right. And you're also sponsoring this in the House with another cattle farmer. Democrats, this is a bipartisan issue. I love when we have farmers in Congress. This would never have been introduced by an urban representative. That's beautiful, too. By the way, I passed the pig that's going to be slaughtered for me in about a week every day I drive home. And I just love knowing where my meat comes from. I think, as you're right, more moms want that. You mentioned the supply chain. I think that was an important point as well, because you're right, the supply chain for meat fell apart during COVID. But there's also humane reasons for this, right? I mean, it's better treatment for animals.
Yeah, it's less stress on the animals. You don't have to ship a cow from Kentucky to Nebraska. You know, think if it takes a truck ride, a train ride, and then it may take a bus ride back. I mean, it's greener to buy local. You're not using as much fuel to transport this animal. It's a lot more humane, and you can know the person who raised the animal. Right now, people can buy meat from a local farmer, but they have to buy the whole animal or half of the animal. It's like $1,000 to, to buy meat. The Prime Act lets you buy it by the cut. So ask your representative to sponsor the Prime Act.
Well, I think you're on a sleeper issue here. I think that food freedom, food safety, freedom from all this processed food that we're eating, and the control of these big companies that you mentioned are going to be the sleeper issue of the next presidential election. I think you're on the forefront of that. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think people are catching on to this. Thanks a lot, Representative Massie.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right.
Thanks.
Bravo. All right. Let's turn now.